Here.
Mr. Lamartino's here. Mr. Caddy.
Here.
Mr. Hickey. Here. Mr. LaBranch.
Here.
Mr. Wolf. Here. Mr. Swank.
Saint.
Ed is Carpenter, I'm sorry.
Here.
Mr. Swanson.
Here.
And Mr. Ward.
Here.
So, all present. State the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next agenda item is public comment. Public comment at 6:31. No members of public. Close public comment at 6:31. Next agenda item is the town proposed budget for 22-23. That Mr. Fournier, for all the news, that guys that are new, people that are new, is Mr. Fournier, our town manager.
Good evening. I know it's the first time meeting everybody in person. Today I have just a presentation on the proposed budget that was adopted by the town council. And I'm actually going to kick it off with some general information since it is my first time meeting with everybody. I thought it would be a good idea to sort of give an overview of our form of government and some of the nuances that we have in Newmarket versus other communities. So one of the things I wanted to show was, like, in New Hampshire there were actually 4 basic types of local government. The first is what people refer to as a strong mayor and a board of aldermen. People elect a CEO to run the city. That's the mayor. They elect representatives to the body to set policy for the city, which is the board of aldermen. And in New Hampshire, there are only 2 cities that have that. That's Manchester and Nashua. Now, this is the nuanced part of this. Then there's what we refer to as the council manager form of government. We vote to elect a legislative body, which is either the city or the town council. The head of the council serves as a figurehead for the community, which is either the mayor or the council chair. And the council hires a professional CEO to run the community, which is either a city or a town manager. 11 cities and 7 towns in the state have this form of government. For around here, the cities of Portsmouth, Dover, Rochester, and Somersworth, and the towns of Durham and Newmarket. So we are a council manager form of government. The next is what we refer to as a select board SB2. That's when the voters elect a select board to serve as a governing body. They may appoint a town manager or administrator to be the chief administrative officer. They do not have to. The town meeting serves as a legislative body. In the deliberative session, people meet to debate and amend articles. People then vote on town meeting day and approve the articles. There are 68 towns in the state that have this form of government. Around here, there are Exeter, Hampton, Rye, Barrington, Epping, some other in Nottingham. This is actually the silo in which the school district falls in. We have different forms of government between the town and the school district. They are a purely SB2 school board, superintendent, go to town meeting, where we're a town council form of government, where the council votes on all the laws, and the only thing that still goes on the ballot is the budget. Budgets and bonds. So you're not going to see these traditional long warrants that you see in other communities. The only 2 things the voters oversee, besides the election of the officials, again, budgets and bonds on the town side, because we are a charter community. Our government's set up by the town charter instead of state law. And finally, it's the select board traditional town meeting. The traditional New Hampshire voters elect the select board to serve as the governing body. They may appoint a town manager or administrator. They have town meeting serve as a legislative body. They meet annually to approve all the warrant articles and annual budgets. They sit in the room in March and hash it out for hours. And this is most towns in the state. Stratham and Newington still have this. So in corporate speak, what are the roles of the town officials? Town council serves as the legislative governing body of the town. So the residents and the voters are what we refer to as probably as the shareholders. The town council is the board of directors. The town manager is the CEO. And what's the budget committee's role? It reviews and recommends the appropriation of funds to the shareholders. So the council adopts the budget, the municipal budget committee then reviews it, and then recommends yay or nay to the shareholders, to the voters. It is the council's duty to set policy and just manage, and it's the town manager's job to manage the day-to-day operations. The budget committee is in charge of overseeing the finances for it's sort of a subcommittee of the community to say, yes, we've gone through the budget, we agree with some of the policy decisions that the council is making, or we don't, and then go forward from there. So I just want to make sure that they understand that the policy-making body is the town council. Yep.
To be clear, there is the deliberative session that people vote on or approve the town's budget portion, correct?
They do at town meeting, correct.
And warrant articles, so there is.
We do not have warrant. We have only warrant articles that we have are bonds.
Okay.
That's it. That's why we don't see contributions to capital reserve funds. You don't see the zoning amendments that you do in traditional towns, because we are a council form of government. We are closer in government to Portsmouth than we are to Exeter, because the council is a legislative body, and that also all those ordinances are done there. Even petitioning to put something on, to have it before the voters, is a completely different process than the 25 signatures that you would need in Exeter. And even the 25 signatures you'd need for the school district. We have a process. We have to go through a number of voters that we had at the last election, and then the council goes before the council. They determine if they want to have a special election. If they just, and it's a very long process that we've only came close to once a few years ago about an ordinance. So it's, our government is set up through the town charter, not through state law. I think it's the best way to sort of outline that. So that's why some of the things that the school district may do, we may not, because we have a separate, different type of government. So that's one of the big differences. Again, I mean, if anybody's been to a deliberative session in the last 5 years, the town deliberative session maybe lasts 10 minutes, because it's just the budget and any bonds that we may have. This is just I apologize that it's difficult to see up there, but this is just a current organizational chart for departments. There's three. There's the town clerk tax collector, who's independently elected. She oversees elections and the collection of taxes. Then there's my office, the town manager. And then there's the library. The library is independently overseen by a board of library trustees, which is appointed by the town council. But we do not get into the day-to-day operations of the library. Under mine is we have the assessing, emergency management, welfare, and legal. That's all in the town manager's office. Then we have the other departments. We have police, fire and rescue, community development, code enforcement, finance administration, environmental services, recreation, public works, and then facilities. And then underneath you have all the divisions that each of those department heads report to. And I won't go through every single one of those. And also, when we start writing the budget, we meet with all these department heads, and we do it on a Saturday. They meet with the council, explain what their priorities are for next year. First, they meet with me and the finance director, and we go through it, and that's when I propose my budget to the council. We give the chance to the department heads to meet with the council and explain their needs, and then the council will adopt their budget to come forward. But one of the things we do also look at is some of the what's going on with the economy. So this is sort of a quick state of the economy for Newmarket. I don't think anybody's going to be surprised. One of the big things that we look at is the consumer price index. This is the percentage increase year over year of the goods that we use, everybody in their day-to-day lives. As you can see, in July 2020, Boston, which we really look at, had a 0.8% CPI increase over the previous year. That, of course, was because of the pandemic. Then we got out of it, and now we're hearing nationwide is a 5.4% increase in the CPI. Northeast Regional is a 4.3, as well as the Boston area was a 4.3. Why is this important? Our biggest concern right now is inflation and what's going to happen to the economy in the next few years. And inflation also impacts some of the operating budget line items that we have as well. The other one is just to show where the economy is. Last year, the town of Newmarket in July 2020 had an unemployment rate of 7.6. Same time in 2021, the unemployment rate dropped to 1.9. That, again, just because of the pandemic. 1.9 is negligible. That could be, basically, you can almost have it as zero as our unemployment. 1.9, we can't find people who work jobs. I think everybody's hearing that. This is our biggest concern, again, when it comes to the budget. Next slide is, we set our tax rate last week, early last week, was it early last week, late last week before? So I just wanted to go over what are we talking about when it comes to the tax rate? So the biggest contribution for every tax dollar that you have goes to the local school. That makes up 67%. The next portion that goes to, which was 22% of that dollar, is the town. Next is the state school at 8%. And when I say state school, I don't want to make it sound like we send money to Concord and you get money back from Concord. It's just a percentage that we have to collect that goes back, called the state school, it goes right to the school. It's not a magic fund that goes to and from Concord. And finally, the contribution to the state county, which is 3%.
Just back to
Yep.
In reality, 75% of your tax dollars
Goes to school. That's correct. And this is just a 5-year comparison. If you notice that blue line in the middle, I shouldn't have put blue on blue now that I'm in this room, is the town, and we've remained pretty steady the past 5 years. That drop between 2018 and 19 was a revaluation year. So that's every 5 years by state law, we have to revalue all the properties and get as close to 100% value of the community as possible. I can tell you that right now, even though we just did that in 2018, we're at 73% because of the housing market right now, which is another very scary thing if we're dropping that fast because of market value. It's either going to correct itself or we're going to have to go do a reval again to correct it, because usually you need to be within the 80 to 115% valuation.
How do they know that? I mean,
How do we know?
you did it, yeah.
Market sales, property sales. They take a certain percentage, the assessors review it, the DRA comes in, looks at the records as well, and they can determine what approximately the valuation of the town.
So if my house is valued at $250,000 for tax purposes, but then it sells for $350,000,
Yeah, that's why we look at neighborhoods. We do comparisons. If a house sells in a neighborhood, just exactly what you said, for $500,000, but every other house in that neighborhood is worth $250,000, we do a comparison, and we try to figure out, okay, is this an anomaly because the house is just that good, or is it the market is the property values haven't kept up with the market?
Now, who does that? Does our assessor do that?
He does.
in
We
town?
have a private company that does that. We've contracted that out since I've been here. So we have a private contractor that comes in and does that.
Okay.
And just to go along with that, exactly what I was saying, currently the assessed value of the town is $987,870,471. As you can see, that's an increase from $981,515,373. Why is that number important? That is a total valuation of the town. So for every dollar on the tax rate, we can raise $987,870. That's how we determine the tax rate. That's the number. So roughly a little bit under $1 million equals $1 on the tax rate. And that's how we figure that out. Again, that $987 million is 73%. So finally, the town council is recommending the following for a bottom line budget. The current fiscal year budget is $13,223,167. Department proposed $16,019,541. I proposed to the council a $15,165,541 budget, and finally the council approved the exact same figure, $15,165,541. So the budget increase is $1,436,177. And the budget is made up of 3 different funds. You have the general fund, which is raised solely through taxation, and some other revenue, but that's where the main number you think of. The enterprise funds, which is water and sewer, which is raised through water and sewer rates, and special revenue funds, which is a mix of charging for services or as well as tax dollars. So the enterprise fund is going to be an increase of $613,936. General fund is $564,090, and special revenue funds of $258,080. And just to break that down, the general fund is $9,333,382. Special revenues is $1,707,396. And finally, the enterprise fund is $4,124,763. So where's the increase going? Health insurance is increasing by 8.5% for the health trust. That's our guaranteed maximum rate increase that they give us in the fall. That number could either stay at that or drop, depending on their return of claims against their funds. The recreation revolving budget is increasing due to the new site supervisor role of $41,600. This will be offset by equal increases in special revenues line in the revenue budget, so it's a wash. But we do have to budget it and then take it out on the revenue side. Public Works Administration is up largely due to the addition of an engineering position for $89,000. The Buildings and Grounds Department, on the flip side, will be going down due to the elimination of the Facilities Director role. After discussions, first internally with Water and Sewer, Planning, as well as Public Works, as well as talking to our contracted engineers at this point, it was determined that it's beneficial for the town to bring on a staff engineer. We're spending a lot of money on projects that we've been farming out, to the point that we'll get better service if we have somebody in-house. Does that mean we're going to cut completely engineering? No. Much like we don't cut all of it, the town attorney, since we have one on retainer. We still have special cases, but this will cut down that, and we'll have somebody in-house to administer road projects, help assist with the design and bids for water and sewer, assist with review of planning board plans, and those kind of items. It's just determined at this point in time to do so. I know one of the questions that we received was, will this person help with the school? Well, one of the discussions that we had with myself, the chair of the council, had with the chair of the school board and the superintendent, is that with the shared facilities director position, we're sort of divergent in what we both need. We need someone for that higher end, overseeing facilities systems, heating, electrical, those kind of items that can help do RFPs and those items, where the schools are looking for more maintenance, those kind of day-to-day kind of procedures. So we decided at this point in time that we'd split that position back up to have the engineer on our side will be taking over some of those projects with somebody else on the public works staff, and the current facilities director would be staying on as a school employee only, which that's what they are. We changed that from a town employee to a school employee last year. Does that mean that if the school needs an engineering services that they can't come to the town? Absolutely not. We're the same pocketbook. We're not going to charge the school district if they need somebody to review maybe the repaving of a parking lot or something at the playground. If we have an engineer on staff, they will assist with them, much like we assist with everything else, including plowing, special projects that the school may need. We'll jump in and do that. So we will continue to do that. Police part-time salary is up due to the addition of a part-time parking enforcement officer. We hear parking issues downtown all the time. Before we go and do something like put in meters or looking for a parking garage, the first thing we need is a parking enforcement officer. So this individual will work part-time for the police department, monitoring the parking situation in downtown. Again, we don't know exactly what the revenues from those tickets would be, but we would be able to put that into our revenue and offset some of the costs associated with that as well. Code enforcement officer is transitioning to full-time. It's needed. Volume is there. We're also going to be switching some of the duties. Currently, the planner is also the zoning administrator, which is not common, but it was done when they made the position part-time a number of years ago. The code enforcement officer is traditionally also the zoning administrator, because they're the ones who makes the decision whether or not they get a permit. And so we're going to have that position from the planning would be going over there, so the planning could now focus on other items, including CDBG grants, economic development, those kind of more planning items instead of reactionary. Roadways and sidewalk budget is up 44% increase due to road salt. That is inflation. That is that they're stuck on ships out in the sea, and we are trying to get it. We're trying, and we were told by the company that's what it's gonna be, so we're projecting for the worst. It's not an increase in the amount of salt we use, it's just purely that's what you're hearing about everybody else. Water has gone up due to debt service. That number, $600,000, we're paying off the first year of our bond for all the water projects that we've been going through this year, like on Bay Road, South Main Street. Now it's time to start paying off that debt, and that's under that one. But again, that has no impact on the tax rate. That has impact on the rate payers for the water and sewer. And finally, Channel 13, we're going to be making the director full-time to improve. One of the things that we want to work on is improving communications. We do not have daily, when I first started here in Newmarket, we would have 3 newspapers at almost every meeting covering us. We have 0 now. We are spending as much time trying to get information out to people than it used to be pick up the phone trying to get in. And people get their information differently now. Everyone knows you don't get it on, how many people have to subscribe to a newspaper today. So we need to be forward thinking and try to get more communications out there. This money, we do receive franchise fees from Comcast. It's a fee that we charge them to have the right to be on our polls. So if you ever notice on your bill, there's a little thing, it says franchise fee, and it says if you got an issue, call the town hall. That money goes back to that and offsets this Channel 13. It doesn't cover it completely, but it does help offset that. But we need to be forward thinking and try to get. It's one of the scariest things that when we don't have the people coming knowing what's going on unless they watch Channel 22, which not a lot of people do any longer unless they're really interested in the community. You're not flipping through your channels and seeing Channel 22 and watching a council meeting because it's there. You almost have to search it out now. So we're trying to get more information to people. The other large thing that we discussed, and I know it was a question about why are we using $500,000 of fund balance to as a revenue in this? Because it seems like a high amount. Well, our fund balance is very healthy. We try to get between 5 and 10% in there. We're about 7.2 last I checked. So we're at 7.2, so we're very healthy, and that's after proposing 500,000. What we used to do is we take the 500,000 in October, which a lot of towns you hear this, and they're buying down the tax rate. And you shouldn't do that. That's bad fiscal policy because what you're doing is taking one-time monies and reducing your tax rate and offsetting operations. So you next year may not have that fund balance, which did happen about 10 years ago, and the tax rate can spike back up. So what we've done is we put in there's a policy that any use of fund balance would be budgeted in the following year. And what I try to do is use it for things that will not impact operations. So what we do is contribution to capital reserve funds, which are our savings accounts. This is where we put money aside for doing projects. So some of the capital reserve funds, we have the public works, which is used for equipment. We're proposing a contribution of $75,000. Building improvements, $20,000. Roadway improvements, $250,000. Stormwater management, $25,000. The McAllen Dam is done, so we just want to show you the zero there. Fire department, that's again for equipment, and that's $50,000. Police vehicle is zero. What we did is, there's still money in the capital reserve though there, but we buy police cruisers so often that it's not a capital project, which is a one-time thing. It is a operational cost. So we've moved those funds into the operating budget. So it's no longer a cut, because what we would do is you take money, put it into an account, pull it back out, and then buy the car, which is not a good operation. You should just have it as part of your operating budget. So that's why that one's zero. Dispatch, we're contributing another $10,000. That's in case something goes wrong with the equipment, we can get in there and fix it. We have $2,000 for the Veterans Memorial. There's working on creating a memorial in the community for veterans. The next is the 300th anniversary Expendable Trust for $2,000. If you're not aware, Newmarket will be celebrating this 300th anniversary in 2027. In addition, we are going to be celebrating our 250th as a nation in the year before. So they're discussing combining the two and having a joint celebration over a period of 2 years. we've been putting money aside for anything like fireworks or any kind of things that we can do that year. Recreation facilities, additional $15,000. The master plan, that's through planning. We have to do that every 10 years. So we add additional $10,000. It usually costs a few $100,000 to update the entire document. Capital reserve for library. Again, the library is independent, but they're requesting $30,100. Telecommunications is $20,000. We have not been putting enough money aside in case we have a system failure with our computer system, so that's why we're doing that. Compensated absence expendable trust, we're putting $10,000. That is when an individual ends their career and they have compensated absences built up. We do not have to hit the operating budget. We can go in there, withdraw the funds, and pay them for whatever they may have built up. So finally, what we're proposing is a contribution to capital reserves of $519,100, which is very close to that $500,000 figure there. So if we didn't have the money in the following year, we wouldn't be impacting operations. And the next is a revenue budget. And one of the questions we received was, why was the revenue budget, when we set the tax rate last week, so different than what we projected on the MS5? The reason is we get some of the revenues from the state, and we didn't know we were getting additional revenues. The governor, if he has funded room and meals tax by an additional 40%, up to 40% for at least 2 years, and they put it into a special fund that they can't touch during this budget session, so we will be getting some additional funds. That's why my budget has the $8.9 million in revenue versus what was there. In addition, we had the state, when we get to the tax rate setting, the state has different figures that we won't get until we actually sit down and get the documents from them. What they refer to as the war service credits, capital outlays, and those kind of numbers. So that's where we are. But what we're proposing for revenues, again, as I said, is $8.9 million. So about $4 million of that goes to general fund. That general fund, this is everything but taxation, so it's more your motor vehicle registration, building permits, fees that we may get, again, room meals tax, those kind of, and that's the big difference between the department proposed and the one I proposed, that we didn't know some of the numbers coming in. And again, these are estimates. I'm budgeting now for what I may have at the end of on June 30th, 2023. So that's why these are they're our best estimates at this point in time. The next is Water Enterprise Fund, which is $4.1 million. That offsets all the water and sewer operations. And finally, Special Revenue Funds is $412,000, excuse me. And that's recreation programming. A lot of that's recreation programming. When somebody signs up for a program, it goes right back into the system. So that we have to book it there. In addition, this offsets when you buy your garbage bags. So it goes back and offsets your solid waste. So finally, this is my big warning. The next slide is an estimate only using data as we have today, as I just mentioned. And that would be the estimated tax impact. So how we figure out the tax rate is we take that $15 million, $15,165,541 in gross appropriations. Then we subtract those revenues of $8,915,428. Then we have to add $20,000 of overlay. Overlay is if we have to pay an abatement because of a tax issue. This is where we get those funds. In addition, we have the war service credits for veterans, your veterans credits that you may get. That last year was $142,000. We thought it was going to be $160,000. We reduced that $145,000. We are looking at changing that program to make it more widely available for veterans in the community. Talking to the assessor, it doesn't make that big of an impact, but we would like to maybe offer that to more individuals. So then you take it, and the difference there is between the gross appropriation revenues that we have to raise $6,416,113 through taxation. So what I do is you take that, you divide it by the $987,870,471, and then you multiply that by 1,000, and you get a tax rate of $6.49. Again, before tax rate setting, which is that number up there of $5.84, It was a 3-cent difference between what we estimated last year and this year. I do not believe it will be this big of a difference. We're still going to be looking at some of our revenues now, and because of the numbers we just literally got last week, and see if we can make that a little closer and have up our revenue estimates some more.
You're gonna up them even more than?
We should be able to because of room and meals and some of the other funds that we're getting in. We're getting better numbers. At the beginning, it was just saying, okay, you're going to get a 2% increase over your room and meals tax last year, but then we're finally getting some actual figures. But we're gonna look at it again. We had it for maybe 2 days last week with the holiday between now and then, so we should have some more numbers for you.
Why is there such a big difference between the department's proposed and your recommended?
For the gross appropriations, or
Yeah.
well,
Well, and the revenues as well. I mean, the revenues are significantly.
That was one of the questions. Your revenue estimate was much higher than the department heads. And
late information. We get the numbers we have are much more accurate to what we were using. Again, department heads start in July, and actually, if you look at the revenues, they recommended 8.2, and I came in with 8.9, and that's because of the room and meals tax that we had additional funds coming in. And also, when I get to present the budgets October, and we're further in the year, and I can say, okay, we're seeing motor vehicle registrations going up more than the years past, or we see building permits dropping. And, we saw it, building permits pretty much stayed the same. Motor vehicles, even though there's a shortage of vehicles, have been going up. We are seeing some people buying the vehicles because also it's based on the price of the vehicle.
while we're on this subject, one of the questions was, this is probably an appropriate time to ask it, but the rooms and meals tax, I get confusing information about whether the state says you're going to get so much, but then they don't give you what they say they're going to give you, and now you're saying you're actually going to get more than what they say they're going to give you?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm
And
confused.
it happens the other way too. So one of the things is state, when they put back in, this is your history lesson, sorry guys. Back in the 70s, there was many other different ways that we were able to tax individuals in the state of New Hampshire. At that point in time, they said, we're going to simplify the tax policies in the state and basically go through, I believe we still had the income tax at that point, property tax, and then they came up with one, so we didn't have a sales tax, but we have a room and meals tax to hit tourists. Since they took some of the ways that we as municipalities could raise taxes, they promised us 40% of all revenues from room and meals tax. Did they ever put it in a law? Yes. Did they have to follow the law? No, because they also the people who make the law. So that was brought down for years to less than 10? Around 10? Do you know the room and meals number? But it was low. Yeah. So
they weren't paying you what they said they would.
No, they would not give us what we were owed. This is one of the first years that they came in closer to what we were owed, and they're giving, but it's only viable for 2 years for the next budget. So I've got it for another year, but after that we don't know. And that's the thing with the state revenues. On the other side is highway grant. So they tell us because you pay that 9/10 of a cent on your gasoline that goes into the highway, the road tolls, which is the gas tax. We're supposed to get a percentage of that. They raised it 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, the percentage that we get. Before that, they hadn't raised it since 1992. Even though the economies go good and bad, they just never raised the gas tax portion of that. You don't know the fluctuation of that gas tax. You would not notice in your day-to-day lives. That's how minuscule it is in the taxes, but it means a lot to us. It means hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, last year nobody drove. Everybody had to stay home, so nobody was using gasoline. Guess what? I had to reduce. We know our gas taxes are going down. We're not going to get as much because nobody drove. That's how we make the money. So we have to find it in different ways. And the state's not. They just don't have the money, so they can't give it to us, and they want to do their projects first. So that's where we get revenue. The state, we know when they tell us.
So do we feel confident that you're going to get the revenue from meals and taxes?
Yes, I know I'll get it in this biennium because of the budget. So that, yeah, the revenues is, again, it's an estimate. That is what we have today. Finally, there is one potential article because we are going to borrow $75,000 to assist the Department of Environmental Services Sewer Division in planning efforts relating to continued improvement in wastewater treatment facilities, solids treatment process, and total nitrogen removal. It'll be offset immediately by a $75,000 in principal loan forgiveness under the state of New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Clean Water State Revolving Fund. There'll be no impact on the tax rate or water and sewer rates, but by law, since it's a loan, we have to go to the voters like we do for a bond, and it's a wash. But we do have to go forward with that. So that'd be the one other remaining question I would have out there. I've not had the council vote on that yet, but you will have that prior to your deadlines in January. And that is all I have for the budget presentation.
Questions, comments?
I know there was a lot of questions, and
Yes, there's significant questions. Well, how do you want to handle it? Do you want to?
if I missed anything that I know that was in there, I know there was discussion about capital reserve funds and how we are switching from the capital reserve, funding some projects of capital reserves to releasing.
Well, all right.
And yeah, go ahead.
Okay, we'll kind of go through it. We had talked about the town engineer,
Yep.
sharing the school facilities. There's a lot of questions about leasing and reserves, and can you talk to the leasing and the potential
Sure.
implications of that versus a
Well,
capital reserve fund?
I apologize. Part of the problem is, I know one of the questions I keep getting is, well, if you're going to be paying through a capital reserve fund, a lease, are you just making the money go from one to the other? No, there's money in those capital reserve funds.
Mhm.
So they're built up, and we're going to have some funds in there that in case something happens, we could always go in there for something else. But we have such a significant amount that we need the equipment sooner than later. So we're taking the funds from the capital reserve fund that we have in there and paying a lease. That's for the fire truck. There is what we have referred to as a non-appropriation clause in there, which if something were to happen and we would not have any money, we'd have to turn the fire truck back over. Does that ever happen? Have I ever seen that happen in New Hampshire? I'm knocking on wood. Municipality? No. We always have a way to fund that. What we're trying to get to is that we do leasing as a normal business operation. It's a much better plan to do. I know our Yankee ingenuity is that we should never have debt. Municipalities should have debt. It's okay to have debt. It helps our bond ratings. It helps, which we do not go out on the bond market yet, but we are discussing going out on the bond market to issue our own debt. But it also helps us with planning. So say that fire truck is a five, or I'm going to say fire truck. I'll say with a dump truck with a 10-year lease, since I don't want to get specific. At the end of that lease, we still have that figure there, and we can then start rolling that in and leasing another vehicle. So we have a constant amount of money in the budget to replace vehicles and to have operations. Versus if we were to just do once in a while purchase a truck, say go out there and buy a dump truck for $500,000, you're going to an artificial spike because you're going to be having a one-time large contribution to the capital reserve fund, because we do not fund the capital reserve funds to the level that the capital improvement committee thinks we should. We can't. We just can't afford it. But this will help us address some of the needs we have for equipment by doing leasing. We are going to try to start using the capital reserve funds to pay off some of the things that we have and buy equipment. But it's a policy. This is a policy decision that we should make. Most municipalities, when they become a certain size, that's what you do. I mean, if you go to any of the communities around us, annually they'll issue, after they vote for their budget, they'll issue debt immediately after to do a lot of the projects. So if then they adopt the capital improvement program and then bond the money, or they'll withdraw it through certain funds. By putting it aside every year, we have some funds that, I remember there was a guy, one of my past council was like, well, I want to know where every nickel of every one of those capital reserve funds, what project was that earmarked for? And there was never a record back then. Nobody ever said, oh, this is going for this truck, this truck, this truck. It was, here's just another $50,000 in the fund. So this will actually also get us on a better scheduling for our expenses and debt, so we'll know it's there too. We're not just throwing money into a fund.
I guess part of the thinking was we weren't funding the capital reserve funds correctly in the first place. Now with the leasing, you're actually forcing yourself to fund, pay it a different way.
We're actually doing the equipment purchases. And I don't want to use the term that we weren't doing it correctly. We weren't doing it at the proper levels.
Yeah, well,
So,
okay.
because correctly, I mean, we're doing it legally, we're just not doing it at the proper levels. You know we have a lot of items we have to address in the town in the coming years. You know, we've been putting off for many, many years because of the impending school votes for items. We're now starting to address, we need to address ours, and one of the first things we got to do is this building. I mean, this building is old, it's got some significant infrastructure issues, some wiring issues. We also have space issues. We're still in a building and the facilities of where we moved in the early 90s, and the community's not the same. It's not the same needs. I mean, if you went to the wiring, the number of computers on desks now versus the early 90s is just completely different. The amount of space we need. So, that's kind of the things that we need to start looking at our side. And, we do have a building improvements fund, but we're probably, that's not going to address the issue. I mean, it's just not enough money. At some point in time, we're going to have to bite the bullet and issue debt to fix some of our facilities too. But, I mean, we'll just start planning on that. But in the old days, everybody would say, okay, every year we're going to put $200,000 into this fund until we have $2 million. Don't know if that's the right number, but that's what we'd guess. And that's what capital reserve funds were there for a long time. Yeah.
So then if you want to march forward with that leasing strategy, when we looked at the CIP, it looked like at some point you kind of run into an issue where, you have another lease and the 10-year one's still running. So at some point is it debt that you have to use to finance that?
What you do, yeah, we'll be borrowing money, and we just have it as instead of contributing to the capital reserve funds, it'll just be a line item in the budget that says lease payments. So we would have to budget for it.
So if I was here a couple of years from now, we wouldn't have really capital reserves?
We would. We still need them in case of emergencies. We shouldn't be using them for operations. We should be using them for one-time capital items, or as I said, or emergencies. Like say a truck broke down and we need because if we had a catastrophic failure on a truck, we have to find that money in our operating budget. We can't change the bottom line.
So it's more of an emergency fund.
It is a backup. Yep.
As opposed to a traditional capital reserve.
Exactly. I know we say capital reserves for municipalities. They're savings accounts. It's like your household savings account. You don't run your operations through there. It's where you go to if you have an emergency.
Another question was, are the leases for a default budget, are the leases considered a contractual obligation?
Yes. If there is no non-appropriation clause, then yes, that is considered part of the default budget. So
And
it would
if
always
there's
be
a
there.
non-appropriation clause, would that lease be included in a default budget?
No, because you have a way to get out of it. Let me rephrase that. It's
No.
questionable.
It would seem to me that if you have a lease that's been running for 2 years, then the payments for that are in the budget. Doesn't that mean they would be in the default budget?
And this is the discussion of the default budget and what some refer to as the art of writing a default budget. They're changing the laws quite often on how we're doing it. It used to be, yeah, you're absolutely right. If it was if you had it the year before, you take the operating budget, You take out one-time expenditures, add contractual obligations, and there's your default budget. Well, now, it's not one-time expenditures, it's not the word, it's operation, it's. Yeah. I would say yes, but nobody's been tested on the new law with it either.
Any comments, questions related to leases?
If I could suggest that perhaps as we're moving, and I think it works fine to use the capital reserves as the emergency funding, as we move towards leases as the kind of the more conventional way to acquire things, that I think accounting for it should be clear so that we can see where the leases are. Departmentally, some are in the operating budget, some are not, some are in both. And I think it would be really good if we said, here's the lease for this department, it's gonna, this much is coming out of the operating budget, and we're gonna take 20,000 out of the reserve budget to bring it down to an emergency level that we feel comfortable with.
Yeah, you're right, that's a reporting item.
So I think that clarity would help us in the future understand that.
And we can report that, understand that the way that the budget is set up, that's actually a state form. We have to follow their forms, so that, you're right, and that's why you don't see everything a one-to-one. But we can report that and say, look, yeah, we have these leases, this is what we're gonna recommend for withdrawal to the council to pay for those.
Okay.
So, yeah, we can do that.
So we're using non-appropriation clauses because it gives us the ability to manage it this way per the requirements.
Right, it's a way to get out.
Do we know if that costs us money to have that clause?
I've never heard of it costing. Yeah.
No, I know it's a requirement, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
If we didn't use that requirement.
I've never heard of a difference
Okay.
in my 20 years.
So you run any, you must run letters that basically show the equipment when the end of life is.
Yeah.
And then the replacement cycle.
Yep,
I would have thought that would have been part of the CIP process.
it is. Yep. They come up with that. And the departments come in forward, they say the average life of this vehicle would be 10 years. Police cruisers are not the same as one of the reasons why we actually took them out of the CIP process, because they're not the same as your day-to-day vehicles. But no, like dump trucks, fire trucks, the problem is we haven't been replacing them on the right time frame as we should.
So just a couple more
Yeah.
questions, excuse me. At the end of the lease, who owns the vehicle?
It's usually a $1 buyout clause.
All right, so we continue to own the vehicle,
Yep.
so it still has useful life.
Yep.
It doesn't go away and somebody else buys it.
Correct.
All right. And then the other thing is, do you look at the total, whether it's leased or whether you're taking out a loan, it doesn't really matter?
Same thing, basically, yeah.
Same thing, exactly. So are you looking at a total indebtedness in terms of what the town is gonna have for debt carried on the books
We do.
and so forth, and look at that cycling?
We do.
So that it maintains a certain level?
Yep.
Like the equipment you need?
By law, we're only allowed a certain amount of debt as well. Usually, when we say it, we have to carry the debt for everybody. So we have to carry a percentage for the county, we have to carry it for the school. The town has to make sure that we are a certain level there because of the fact that we're the ones who collect the money. But the town side, we're not close. We're not even close at all. If anything, we're retiring more debt. Water and sewer is not part of that because it's not through the tax rate, so the user fees. It's a different formula. But the town side, we're not close to our debt limit. Because I think the last major thing we bonded that's not water and sewer.
The dam?
McAllen Dam, that's right. And before that, it was down to, I think it may have been one of the safety facilities or downtown project. So we don't issue that much on our side.
I'm just gonna read these
Sure.
questions here. A town salary totals up 12% over the prior year, a significant growth. This would seem to be based on increased FICA, Medicare, and New Hampshire retirement numbers. What are the additions?
We had a significant hit by retirement. I don't know the number off the top of my head.
Retirement?
Yeah, retirement had it. Do you want to modify? I can't hear you.
So we're actually making sure we play it safe, budgeting for positions that have been open. That's really what that is.
So say if I have a vacant police officer, I'm not going to budget their healthcare plan for a single individual. If you play it safe and do it for a family, because worst case scenario, you cut the budget, you cut the budget and have additional funds after. So we're just getting ready for those situations. Plus, we got hit with, again, 8.5% increase in healthcare costs. New Hampshire retirement system hit us with additional costs on their side as well.
So I think you kind of covered wired disability benefits up 27%, significantly in excess of even the increased salary numbers.
Yeah, and some of that also is, municipalities do not get insurance, what everyone thinks is traditional insurance. We're in pools, because we have people who get shot at and run into fire buildings, and no insurance company really wants to insure those. So we're part of a risk pool, as well as workers' compensation pool, as well as a health pool. And if there's a large claim, it could impact our rates. It may not even be in Newmarket, but if the pool gets hit, then we're all getting hit throughout the state. That started in the late 80s, early 90s, when a lot of insurance companies said, "Yeah, we don't want municipalities on their books anymore." To the point, and then to go along with that, for a long time in New Hampshire, there was competition. There was 2 workers' compensations, there was 2 property liability, and a number of health ones. We still have a few health. There's only 1 property liability, 1 workers' compensation. So we don't have a competition anymore for those insurances.
This is a state pool?
It's a what they call I can't remember the RSA off the top of my head. It's 51B. It's an RSA number. The members of the board of directors are all municipal officials. It's not run by the state. It's Health Trust, which it was started by the Municipal Association and spun off about 10 years ago. And the board of directors are made up of school, county, and municipal officials. Is when they have an executive director that offers Blue Cross. Property and liability goes through what they refer to as Primex, as well as workers' compensation goes through those. Again, made up of the members of the board of directors are school, county, and municipal officials.
Are we required to use that health trust?
No, you could use school care, and we can go out on the open market. It's just usually 9 times out of 10 it's cheaper to go through a health trust.
Okay.
Yeah.
My only experience with that sort of thing was with the Stratham Community Church. After we added on to it and doubled the value of the church, I investigated the insurance, and insurance was with a pool of a whole bunch of churches in New Hampshire. And when we left the pool and went on our own policy, we reduced the cost of insurance on a building that was twice as valuable. So those trusts sometimes
it does, yeah.
They
I know
aren't what they ought to be.
And I know they've tried to come out with other ones since, especially for the liability insurance. The problem was if something does happen, it's trying to get paid. When they're too new, they don't have all the money in there. So but if there's more competition, the more the merrier. We would love to be able to go for more. But it's just right now, the market's just not there.
So do you shop that around once a year or every other couple of years
Well,
or something?
usually health will do every so often, just get numbers. Problem is, we also have a collective bargaining agreement with the police, and that's part of the negotiations as well. And I believe last time we did school care, there was higher Yeah. And it's just a tire going through.
I think you kind of covered this one, but let me read this. What explains the wildly different tax rates? The budget lists the projected fiscal year 22 rate town at 646, while the New Hampshire DOR set it at 584. This represents roughly...
Exactly, that's the revenue. We didn't know the exact numbers we were going to get from the state until the actual tax rate set.
There's
So we were
increased
going-
revenues.
Yeah.
So, in order to kind of consider what this budget represents in terms of tax rate, knowing that it will change when it
Yeah.
gets set, do we compare the 649 with the 646? Based on, that all guesses were the same? Or do we compare it with 584 and say, wow, it's way up?
I try to be as conservative as possible, so I would go with the number that we have in there is the closest. The one that I've been using, the 640. I'm sorry, again, I don't have the number in front of me, but the number that we've been using in the budget. Again, the number I want to look at to change would be what the room and meals tax is actually going to be. But remember, any increase there too, we're also having a decrease in the highway. So it may not be a huge difference there. I wish I had a better crystal ball. And the other factor is this: that 980 million for the valuation of the town. That's going to change by the time we set the tax rate next October. Could it go up? Could it go down? Depends on the economy. I've been in towns when all of a sudden we've had the market drops and the houses go down, and then we have to, we have to do a reval and determine that. And you have the dollar's just not what it used to be. Newmarket, that happened to me. When I got here, we did a reval shortly after the 2008, the Great Recession, and the value of the town dropped. So what we used to be able to get for $1 wasn't the same 2 or 3 years later. We're much better positioned than we are now. But when we set the tax rate, that 980 million valuation of the town could be different. I would say with the market right now, it would be greatly different. Because think of it that way, what I said earlier, we're at 73%. If we would be 100% today, at 25%.
How many part-time employees, this is the town clerk tax collector's office. How many part-time employees are there? Is there a potential saving converting these to a full-time employee?
There are 3 part-time. The clerk is the only person full-time. She is looking at restructuring the department. Her longtime deputy retired. Congratulations, deserves it. But she wanted to stay on as a part-time. We still want to make sure that the new deputy is as trained as that individual. So she's going to be looking at her staffing in the coming years to make sure that happens. Remember, the deputy position has to be a resident. And if the town clerk decides that they don't want to be the town clerk anymore, that person has to take the position. That's one of those odds. We don't hire the new town clerk, the deputy takes over. So the position we hire is the deputy. But she is going to be looking at that, and we agree with the same thing. By changing one, it may be, it'd definitely be beneficial.
What caused the significant growth in the police department part-time salaries?
Parking.
Actual
Parking enforcement.
person?
Yeah. Before putting in meters, I'd rather enforce the laws that we currently have.
Vehicles. It would seem that the standardization of vehicle maintenance accounting would have the maintenance of vehicles in respective department budget, especially in the case of the fire department, police department, public works. I believe maintenance is a departmental function. I think that was just related to...
Yeah, and that's, the town used to have an in-house maintenance facility. So it wasn't per each department. We had a vehicle maintenance department that was changed, so we do it out of house, but we still kept the vehicle maintenance. I believe it is broken down by We know exactly the vehicles. Right. It's not in their individual departments. We do it town-wide.
Right, I think the question is saying.
Why don't we?
Why,
Yeah, we just haven't gone back. We still have one vehicle department. Since we switched. I mean, we could. I mean, I wouldn't do it this year, but I would, divide it out as a reporting for next year, and each department be in charge of their own motor vehicle.
I'm sure what that accomplishes.
You're just moving it from one to the other. It's not going to change the bottom line.
The other was on the social service grants. It looked like there's a number of grants that are being funded, but the money isn't being expended.
Yeah, so what happens, we release those funds when they're requested by the entities. So some of them just may not have been requested yet. Most of them, we get a letter they're not on a fiscal year like we are, they're on a calendar year budget, so we'll get them in January or right after traditional, when they do town meeting, all those budgets go in, we'll get it in March, so that's usually it.
A bunch of questions on the library. So how much money is in the library trust?
I do not know. I have to ask the library trustees again. They're an independent. We give them basically a grant. When I say that, we know what's in their operating budget, but they I do not have any oversight other than that for the library. The library trustees oversee the library.
You're blindingly give them.
I do not have authority to get into that.
You have authority to say, no, I'm not going to give you $300.
I do not have that authority.
What? No, I'm sorry.
As soon as that's appropriated, this library trustees are an independent governing body who oversees that. If they want their money, we give them their money. That's the law.
So if they came and said, give me $5 million?
No, they only get their appropriation. But it's not we do not have authority over how it's expended.
No, I understand that, but you're approving the authorization of appropriation of $300,000, right?
The voters do. No, the voters do. We just facilitate. It's a ministerial act at that point. We sign it. It goes on. I don't have authority over the library trustees.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. No. And it's state law. It's an old, again, one of the old laws. The reasoning is they didn't want to have select board members to tell the library what books they could and could not buy. But the law's still there that we don't have authority. We can give them the bottom line, but the day-to-day, what they spend it on, we do not have authority.
But the amount that we give them is dictated by them or is decided by you?
It's decided by the council. The council can we can change that bottom line number, 310. I'm using that round number, but we cannot get into the operations.
But
Yeah.
you increased the number for this year. That was the only.
Oh, the capital contribution.
Capital
No, sorry,
contribution.
No. That one we do not. We don't touch that. That's the library trustees. I would recommend having them come in and explain that to the budget committee. We just do we ultimately could we change that? Yeah, but no, we do not know definitely that we could reduce that number.
No,
That's a different thing. The capital reserve.
The capital reserve. That's right. But that's what he was asking about.
yeah, the capital reserve.
The
increase in capital reserve for the library.
Correct. Because the library is an independent entity like that, while it goes through the town budget, it is traditionally not reduced because it's a ministerial aspect. The budget, they go to the council and ask, explain why. But other than that, it traditionally goes through, and if the budget committee had questions, the library trustees would come in and explain the increase.
Okay, so there was a bunch of questions.
I can have the new library director come in, and I think it would be great for her to meet with the budget committee and explain the operations. But understand, yeah, we do not. Besides putting it in there, we do not have any.
I would think you, as a town manager, would say, "What do you want?"
It's not, but it's not my. I do not have authority to change it.
I know you don't have the authority to change it, but you ask them. I mean, it's like 80% of the fire department budget. The council and I asked during the process. Again, we do not change it
through that. That's their duty to come in, advocate for their budget before the municipal budget committee.
Okay, so there was a bunch of questions, they didn't respond
They would come
to-
in. Yeah, they should
And-
come, well, we can get them to come in,
Okay, so
or reply in writing.
I will
Yeah.
send, I'll send this and ask if, I don't know who,
Yeah, I can
they have
send
a new
it.
person, right?
Yeah, I can send it, and I'll CC you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, our next, we have a meeting Monday for the, school, but, the end of the month, end of December,
Yeah.
27th, I think was when.
Yeah, we should be able to get from Monday.
Okay. Look,
It's,
being
yeah.
mean to you.
I know.
Recreation revolving, page 56 shows the rec department had not requesting an increase in salaries, but the town manager requested 41,000. Is this a typo?
Nope. The reason why
No
is
typos.
if that salary was in the operating budget in the general recreation fund, and the programming that didn't happen, we would still have to appropriate the money for that salary. When I move it to the recreation revolving fund, if for some reason that doesn't happen, because revenues don't come in, I can cut the position without raising the money through taxation to fund it. So it's gonna be pay or play. If that is actually gonna work, then they need to fund it through the fees that they're gonna collect.
I don't know whose question was it. Water and sewer, what could we have done earlier to prepare for the large increase in water funding?
Nothing. Actually, the reason why we got it is it's a good thing. We're getting a lot of debt forgiveness because rural development offered us a $12.5 million worth of projects. Sean is working and financing it with different entities. These are all projects that we had to do. The Bay Road and South Main Street are the two largest portions of that. Those are 1890 pipes that they're replacing. So it's either now or sometime in February when it freezes that we've replaced those. In addition, we are doing the blending facility at the Macintosh, which one? Did I say the wrong one? I've got so many of them at this point. Blending facility that we did for a project a few years ago. We're moving forward with the Tucker Well project to have more water to be in our system. So that was all in that $12.5 million. We had a deal. I remember sitting in the room and they said, "Well, how many projects do you have?" We thought, "Okay, we'll give them like $2 million." And rural development said, "No, we want bigger." So we gave them the wish list, and they said, "Yeah, go for it. We'll give forgiveness and we'll have lower rates on that as well." So it's something we had to do for a while, and it just hit us this time.
Why are we increasing capital reserve funds to the water and sewer department so drastically this year?
And that's what I was.
Significant issues?
I didn't see it. So in my budget, I'm just going to pull up my document maybe. If you go to the water and sewer, water last year on the budget, transfer to capital reserve funds, we budgeted $169,585. We're budgeting $114,735. So that's the water capital reserve fund. On the sewer capital reserve fund, we had 439. It's going up to 454,356. That's, I didn't, when I said significant, I was expecting a much higher. One's down and one's up by 15,000, which is that again, those are funded through surplus funds that they have through rates that they just put in those funds. So it's not through taxation. I think maybe somebody saw the principal on the water debt because that's we have to pay the first year payment this year. So I wonder if that was the issue. That was a $500,000 or $600,000 increase.
Not sure. Don't know. Any other questions for Steve? I don't.
The chair's here too, the council chair's here, so.
Member of the public. I'll just throw my editorial comment here, because my personal opinion is, the town side of things are pretty lean budget. So I think you're doing a good job, Steve. I know you get a lot of crap, but the job.
It's my job. And if anybody wants to see, if you go on the website, a few years ago, we did an efficiency study through an independent company called Municipal Resources, Inc. Everybody thought they were gonna come back and say that we had a lot of fat in the municipal side, you know, we're gonna be able to cut it. They actually came back and said, you guys run dangerously lean, that we had some departments that if the bus hit the director, we'd have an issue. So that's what we're trying to address.
There was one item I was confused by. For the building improvements, the department had proposed raising almost $750,000, and you proposed $20,000.
Yeah, what we did was, since we didn't have the facilities director on board, we took the CIP committee's recommendation for building improvements and had his recommendation.
That would do it.
I said no.
That would do it.
I got it down. And for those who've been on the budget committee for a while, we're following it. Usually what happens is the CIP committee comes up with this request of a few million, and I come in and say, it's going to be more like 300,000. So, just to make sure we can, my job is to balance both the needs and the ability to pay for those needs.
So, I'll say it, if anybody has any additional questions or thinks of something over, the next week or two, whatever, please send them to me. I'll forward them to Steve.
And we'll get those library ones answered.
Sorry, what was that?
We'll get the library.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did that. Okay, sir. Thank
Great,
you very
thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I sent everybody an updated calendar. Any questions, comments on the calendar? Next Monday, we have the meeting with the superintendent and Gianella to go over the school part. Received some questions. I sent them off to the superintendent today. CC'd you guys on that. End of December, we'll have a meeting, and I guess we'll talk to the library group then, put some questions here. And then, beginning of January, we have the public hearings for the town, and then the public hearing for the school. And the deliberative session is still set for February 5th.
Question. When do we think we'll have a vision on whether we need to have a meeting on the 18th, Saturday the 18th? So,
I don't think we will, other than unless there's a snowstorm or something. That's the only reason that we would have those alternate days.
if there's a possibility we have to do something like that, it's a possibility we request a Zoom participation or something like that. I'm early about a town on the weekend, so that's why I just asked.
We can have a public meeting and then do what we did. We can take a vote for everybody that's present to allow you to attend via Zoom. We can do it that way.
I would let you know in advance if that was necessary.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes from October 25th. Any questions, comments, or? We can have a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Who's that?
So moved.
It's Chris. Second is Mike.
Yes.
Any questions, comments, changes? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
So moved.
resignation?
Second.
Second by Roger. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Opposed.
Mr. Chair, that was a question I was going to ask, where we're really into the meat of the budget session. Do we want to consider a replacement at this time?
I mean, if somebody wants to volunteer to do it,
Okay.
you know, I think they should entertain it, but I'm not gonna go out and solicit anybody at this point.
Okay.
Getting kind of late. And I don't think we have enough people consistently showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Any other business? Any other questions, comments? So our next meeting is gonna be next Monday, 6:30, we'll go over the town, the school side, I said. So, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Tony.